So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast on a better day than yesterday. I suppose that's the best way I can put it. And the reason that today is a better day than yesterday is because we have Boubacar Kamara in our team. Aston Villa have signed Boubacar Kamara on a 5-year deal. Was muted by Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein, Global Greg Evans yesterday. It has now come into fruition, and Aston Villa woke us all up nice and early this morning with a fantastic montage and great news, should I say, of Boubacar Kamara signing for our brilliant, wonderful, and downright illustrious club. So I'm absolutely thrilled, and I know I may not look like it. Today's been a long. It's been a long day trying to soak in the information, and I hope there's all the possibilities could come back and bite me in the arse again. But like Boubacar Kamara signing for Aston Villa on a free transfer when every single team in Europe probably would have been sniffing around and looking at him, it's quite big news. It's quite big news. We started off as well, like a lot of people have been talking about this. Philippe Auclair has come out. If you don't know Philippe Auclair, he's Mr. French football in a lot of circles. He's come out and he said that this is an absolute massive signing for Aston Villa. Andy Brazil has come out and said it. I'm racking my file of facts in my brain. There's somebody else who actually came out and said that this is probably the signing of the season, that there's like on a free transfer for a team like Aston Villa to get a player who has a ceiling as high as Boubacar Kamara, who's newly in the French senior setup for the upcoming games, is that good a signing within European football at this moment in time. And it's nice to hear that about our club. It's nice to hear that about our club this morning. It's nice to be able to knock off that rust and that dust and that kind of feeling from yesterday when we have somebody like Boubacar Kamara to sign. It shows that Aston Villa we're not a flash in the pan from that point of view. When we got Coutinho, we're not just good at getting players on the way down. Signing Boubacar Kamara shows that we have that pulling power and that impetus and that structure, that ability, that grown-up mentality in the boardroom to be able to go and wine and dine and coax and talk to and bring along a player that is highly thought of in Europe at 22 years of age, who was with a club who had just gotten Champions League football, and to sign for Aston Villa Football Club just goes to show that we are able to sell and we're able to talk about a project, and a project that we hope we can fulfill amongst the shark tank that is the Premier League. So that was a long diatribe, I know, at the start, but Boubacar Kamara is a really exciting signing for a lot of reasons. And as always, I want to share some statistical analysis that I've done on Boubacar Kamara. I've updated this. I've been plugging a video that I did in January on Boubacar Kamara and some of my thoughts. I've actually looked more into him because I never thought that we were going to have a situation whereby I never thought that just because we didn't get him in January that we wouldn't still be in him in June or May or whatever month we're in now at the moment. The reason being is at the time the kind of the murmurings coming from the club was there were deals there, but we just weren't comfortable with the money that was being asked and that there was things that were being asked of at that time. And I firmly always believed that was this signing. I believe this signing was being muted along with the Bentancur signing. I don't think it was an either or situation. So when we do come to look at potential ins and outs, which myself and Paddy will be doing in a future podcast for the season review, I think that this may not be the last midfield signing that we would see. And I think it stands to reason, if anybody was listening to the Carton Blue this morning, it would stand to reason that you would. I made my play for why I think that is the case. But Boubacar Kamara, absolutely over the moon with his signing, because he shows a lot of things he shows that we're able to entice the young up and coming darlings of European football, along with the guys like this guy behind me, Coutinho, who's been there, done it, and has the trophies and medals around his neck to show for it. So hopefully this is the start of a very, very good transfer window for Aston Villa. So let's talk about Boubacar Kamara. Let me add up this to the stream. So Boubacar Kamara, he is obviously French, as everybody will know at this stage. I've put in here with regards to height. I cannot get a definitive as to what height he is. He's somewhere between 5'10" and 6 foot. Okay, I think that's fair enough. I don't think we're going to split hairs over that. Either way, he looks an imposing figure when he's on the field. He does, like, he's one of these guys that togs out maybe bigger than he is, but he's somewhere between 5'10" and 6 foot. Some sites say he's 5'10", some sites say he's 6 foot. So I'm going to hedge my bets and put those in there. He's 22 years of age, as we all know. And what I think is really interesting, and what I want to harp on here as well, is I've updated a lot of these numbers from my previous video. We can see here that he's played quite a lot of games in various different positions. And I think this is something that would have drawn Aston Villa and Steven Gerrard in particular towards Boubacar Kamara. So what we can see here is that as a player, he's played 50 games at centre back for Marseille. First made his debut in 2017, and realistically since 2020 really, his games at centre back have lessened off. So in 2019 he began to really transition towards a defensive midfielder, central midfielder type player, and his centre half status has kind of lessened off since then. Boubacar Kamara has played under two managers at Marseille, played under AVB, Andrea Villas-Boas, and most recently he's played under Jorge Sampaoli. And the two managers have utilized him in different ways. AVB first started him off as a centre half, or he started off playing there, alternating between centre half and defensive midfield sparingly. Then he moved on towards being solely played as central defensive midfield, and then on towards now he plays predominantly between that 6 and 8 role. And that's really interesting when we look at it, because I think that this guy is getting better by the year, and as he's moving further up the field, and I don't think he's going to move much further up the field, like, don't get me wrong. I think central defensive midfield and central midfielder are his area. That's where his wheelhouse is going to be. But it's always great to have that type of player that can move backwards into a back three and feel comfortable there, considering he's played quite a lot of games in one of Europe's top 5 leagues at that position as well. So it's really interesting. So much so that even when Sky announced the news today, this morning, they were taken aback that we had mentioned him as a central defensive midfielder as opposed to a centre half. You know, so when this comes in, when he was coming in here, we're actually talking about him as being a central midfielder, or a midfielder is what we said. We didn't make the distinction between defensive midfielder and central midfielder itself. But we can see that he's had a pretty even split of games and of game time between centre half, central defensive midfielder, and central midfielder. When we look at his heat map, we can see this is his heat map from League on last season, and we can see that he pretty much hacks around the middle of the field, which you would expect, you know, more so in the defensive position, more so the 68 position, and that's what we would expect from him. I've made a couple of notes here that he's got great potential and he's got a really, really high ceiling. This guy can go far. You know, he's been spoken about in the same breath as the likes of Camavinga for Real Madrid, and we know what he's done since he's shot to the limelight within the Champions League this season. He's been spoken, and I still can't pronounce his name, Aurélien Tchouameni, I think he's how you pronounce it, from Monaco. He's been spoken in the same light as him, and he's been spoken about as one of these guys as the new guard of French football, French midfielders, all of them in around the 19 to 22 bracket, and Kamara has been somebody that it's not surprising as to why he is why he would have been spoken that way, and why he's now gotten a first call up to the French national team at 22 years of age. One of the biggest things that I found from watching him on video and on scouting software that I have is that he's always looking around and scanning the field. You'll see it. I made the analogy today that he's like when you do your driving test for the first time, you're constantly looking at your mirrors, you're looking around, you're trying to see what's behind you all the time. You're trying to get spatial awareness and a perspective of everything that's around you. He's absolutely excellent at it. And I mean that when he's receiving the ball, he's almost looking around to see what's happening. It's not a lack of discipline. It's not a lack of concentration from him. If anything, he's super aware of what's going around him. When he has the ball at his feet, he's super aware as well. As we can see when you look at his pass completion rate here, he likes to see what's happening around him. He likes to make those passes. He likes to make the passes definite, and he likes to make them stick and make them successful as well. He's got a really good passing range. He's got very high. I don't have the numbers here, but his pass completion rate is like 93% at short or 95% at short range, 93% at medium range, and 77% at long range. So this isn't the crab. This isn't the guy who's going to pass it George Boateng style. No offense to George Boateng, and great servant Aston Villa as he was. This isn't going to be a guy that's just going to move it left and right and pad his numbers. He's actually a pretty progressive player, and he likes to progress the ball forward. We can see it there in his progressive passes, 4.23 progressive passes over the course of the last 365 days. That's 4.23 per game, with a progressive pass distance up in the top 86 percentile of all of Europe's top 5 leagues. So while this guy does play in a more withdrawn role, he can get the ball forward, he can pass it forward, but he can pass it forward successfully, which is very, very important. We can see here as well, looking at this, that this guy isn't just his pass success completion, should I say, is even more admirable from the fact that look at the amount of pass attempts he's had. 78.9 attempts per 90 minutes. He is a workhorse of a pivot in there. And we'll get to see that in a moment when we categorize this, because I have put him up against some of the Premier League's darlings that would play what I think is a similar position to where he will play for Aston Villa. So his pass attempts, 78.91 in the top 3% of all Europe's midfielders. Pass completion, 71.91, as we said there, in the top 3%. His passing is really good, and his passing is pretty varied as well for a guy who plays in that position. Once again, Sampaoli really trusted him with the work that he wanted him to do. We can see there he's averaging 89.27 touches per 90 minutes over the course of the last 365 days, which is up there. You won't find a more a bigger workhorse in midfield, or you'll seldom find a bigger workhorse in midfield than Boubacar Kamara over Europe's top 5 leagues. And that says something about the measure of the guy in itself, because he's 22 years of age. You know, to put that on a 22-year-old's shoulders, put that on a 21-year-old's shoulders as he was at the start of the season. Yeah, I know. Look, it's like, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And some people will turn around and say, well, he's 22, you know. This is a guy that's transitioned from centre half into the midfield role. He's 22 years of age. He's already done that in a senior game at 22 years of age. And you've got a real good manager like Jorge Sampaoli looking to essentially make him the fulcrum and the feature player in starting Marseille's attacks. And Marseille played an awful lot of a possession-based game as well, which is something that should be borne in mind as well, because we may not play exactly the same possession-based game, but it rings true, and it stands to reason that Steven Gerrard came into this club and said we need to keep possession. We haven't done it so far this year. Maybe Boubacar Kamara can help us unlock that potential of keeping possession when it is needed, if we play him in that pivot position. Also, as I said here, look, I wouldn't pigeonhole him specifically as nothing other than a number 6, and the statistics just pan it out. He's very good defensively, and you know, he could be better defensively. And some of those numbers that you see there are obviously skewed by what he's been asked to do by the team manager, and what he does within the game, within the structure, should I say, of Marseille. But like there is no qualms, queries, or concerns at all about his defensive ability, about his tackling ability. You see his pressures there are pretty low at only 15.34. For me, that isn't a concern. He's a deliberate tackler. When he goes to tackle, he's going to, like, it reminds me kind of when I did the video of Maxime Lacroix. When he tackles, when this guy goes to tackle, he wants to try and make it as successful as it possibly can be. He's calculated in that aspect. He will engage players high up, but when he does, his pressure success rate is off the charts. So would you prefer to have somebody who's got 40 pressures a game and only has a pressure success rate of 15%? Or would you prefer to have somebody who's a bit more calm and has a more calculated demeanor of having 15 pressures per game, but you've got a higher pressure success rate? I think I prefer somebody who's a bit more calm, because what that does and what that allows Boubacar Kamara to do is slow down the opposition as they advance towards our area. What we tend to do, and I've said this before, specifically in midfield, is we retreat and we don't slow attacks down, and we retreat. And if you don't slow the attacks down, we don't have time to reform. What we try and do is we try and get back and reform, but attacks have become more varied, and the speed that fullbacks are able to get forward even at the moment allows teams to switch the ball or to switch the play through the transitions an awful lot quicker. So if you are going to retreat and protect the D, you need to be super fast, and your fullbacks need to stay at home. If we're going to persevere with our fullbacks going forward, having somebody like Kamara that sits in that hybrid 6-8 role, where he has license to go forward and maybe a more flat midfield, as opposed to that defensive inflection that we would put with a number 6, like when we've Nakamba in there, then I think that's going to be way more beneficial for us to have somebody like this. Let's look at some more slides. What other slides do I have? So I promised you, here's some player comparisons. We have obviously I've wanted to compare him towards people like Yves Bissouma, like Douglas Luiz and Declan Rice. My comp for him is like the type of player that Declan Rice is, or maybe Bissouma. I think he's probably better. Well, he's a better passer. He's way better passer than Bissouma, but he's probably more like Declan Rice. Now, I don't want people to actually fly off the handle and go, oh my God, we're going to sign Declan Rice. Absolutely not. I'm talking about the way that Declan Rice can trade the lines between 6 and 8. I think Kamara does it quite similarly as well. And if I'm not mistaken, and I never looked this up again today, and this will be my second time making this aspersion, but if I'm not mistaken, Declan Rice has played centre half for West Ham, and he also played centre half in the Irish youth setup, if I'm not mistaken too. So they do have a similar trajectory of how they've maybe started off in a more defensive role and moved up the field as it's been realised that they're maybe better with their feet and can contribute more as they go forward. So looking at this here, we can see the color coding here is green is obviously where they're the best in this area. Yellow is where they're second. Purple is where they're third. And red is where they're fourth. Once again, I am also going to say this. This is not an aspersion on Douglas Luiz. I still think Douglas Luiz is going to be an Aston Villa player come the start of August. And I think that these are being skewed by Douglas Luiz being asked to do something that he's not very comfortable doing. I think that's fair to say. So when we look at Boubacar Kamara, he really, if we're going to pigeonhole him as a 6, as I said here, he really picks up steam when we look at the pass attempts and the pass completion, the pass progress, the progressive passes, and the passes under pressure. So this guy, as I said, he's got his head in a swivel. He knows what's happening around him. When you pressure him, he can evade that pressure and make a successful pass. The rate here is phenomenal in comparison to somebody like Declan Rice. Just looking at the passes under pressure, Declan Rice has 8.53 passes under pressure per 90 minutes. Boubacar Kamara has 50% on top of that again. He's 12.04. Puts him right up there at the top of the list in guys who can evade that pressure and make that pass. And that's invaluable for Aston Villa when you've got a high press. You're playing against the likes of City. I don't want to bring it up again. You're playing against the likes of Liverpool. You're playing against the team that have a high press. Crystal Palace did to us. They pressed the living daylights out of us high through Conor Gallagher, through oh gosh, I can't even remember who else played that day, but they pressed us really high. We were unable to get away from those pressures. And if you've got somebody who's okay under pressure, who can turn, maybe progress the ball forward, and once they've committed people to pressing you high up, that can really be a good fulcrum for an attack. So I really, really like that. Also, look at his touches. 89 touches, as opposed to the next nearest person was Declan Rice at 69. He's a workhorse. He was fed absolute work, and he still produced great results from it. So that to me is super, super, super interesting, and something that I really am looking forward to seeing. Give him all the work he wants based on what he's done before. I've got a statistically saying, should I say, that I've got a good feeling he'll be able to do that in the step up to the Premier League. Also, we take a look there at Yves Bissouma. You know, people wanted to spend 50 million on him. And I'm not saying that he would be a bad purchase at all, but the type of player he is, he's not a central defensive midfielder as such. He can tackle. He's really good. He's a good tackler. He pressures at a decent rate. His passing really drops off. But what you kind of lose in that interceptions, tackles pieces that you gain with Bissouma, I think is probably more beneficial for us to have a more rounded kind of fulcrum there. And that passing is really exciting. That passing metric for Kamara is really exciting. And as I say, if it's replicated in the Premier League, it's super beneficial, for what Aston Villa can do and how we can launch attacks. So I think I've got another slide here. I wanted to talk about his development, I suppose, from a statistical point of view, through the kind of years. Because as I say, he did play under AVB for 2 years previous to Sampaoli coming in. So I wanted to just kind of take it here from minutes played, interceptions, and see how he's kind of progressed as he's been asked to move more further forward, as he's been asked to pass the ball more, and how he has responded to that and how his numbers have responded as well. So we can see here, first year that we have here, 2019-20, he was predominantly a centre half. He played there for 1,170 minutes. As he moved through the years, then he started playing as a defensive midfielder. 1,768 minutes he played in 2021, and then as a central midfielder in the year just gone, he has played 1,470 minutes as a central midfielder and 1,287 minutes as a defensive midfielder. And if you are going to get out your calculators and add them up to see if it matches the minutes played, I haven't included substitution appearances. Okay, so I'm not going to get out and get that granular in the information. But what we can see here is a lot of things stand to reason. From 1920 all the way to 2022, which is the year just gone, his interception rate has improved. You'd expect that as he goes further up the field, you'd expect him to have more opportunities to intercept the ball. Centre halves don't really have a massive interception rate, or don't tend to have as big an interception rate, because you want them, defending as opposed to trying to go out and intercept the ball and take it off people and run forward with it. That's not what we really want. But we can see here with regards to tackles, he had a much higher tackle rate. So he tackled at a higher rate when he was a centre half, which stands to reason, than he would have as he moved through the gears. Obviously, then he moved to defensive midfielder. His tackles went down a small bit. Once again, probably to be expected. And as he moves forward towards a more central midfield position, his tackles have decreased as well. So remember when I mentioned there that I don't worry about this guy's defensive abilities based on the numbers that we see as of today and as over the last 365 days, because he's proven he can do it as a centre half, that he can tackle. He's proven that he can still tackle at a decent rate when he's used more predominantly as a defensive midfielder. And as he moves forward throughout the field and his assignments change, he's still proven that he can tackle at a decent rate. So I'm okay with that. Dribble past, as you see, further up the field he gets dribble past less, which, to be honest with you, is actually really interesting, because you'd kind of think that as a defensive midfielder you might get dribbled past more, but the further up the field he's moved, he's got dribbled past less. His pressures have decreased from last year. Once again, playing in that playing more time as maybe an 8 or that hybrid 8 without having that specific stand behind that 4-man midfield as AVB did previously. He is able to still put in a decent amount of pressures, but they obviously weren't as high as the year before. His pressure success rate has increased. So once again, he's not pressuring as much, but he's much more successful. And he's much more comfortable doing it in higher areas. Once again, massive positive. I don't know why I haven't got that green on my slide. The 39.7% should be green. Aerial success, once again, you'd imagine it will go down when you're further up the field, because the ball is going to go over your head and it's going to bypass you. It just goes to show that when he is in the defensive midfielder position, his aerial duel success shoots up to 63.2% when he's predominantly played there. Really interesting numbers here for this guy, and it just shows that as he moves through, he's given different assignments based on the role, the traditional 6, 8, or even 4 role that he would have played previously, or 5 role, should I say, that he would have played previously. He would still be able to perform those duties, which is brilliant for a guy so young. Just looking at his passing, I'm not going to take too much, going to go too much into his passing. You can take a look at it here. But one of the interesting ones that you'll see is his progressive pass distance has decreased year on year. And once again, the reason for that is obviously if you're playing at centre half, you're going to be passing the ball forward probably more often than not. So his progressive pass distance is going to be more. It's going to be longer. He's going to probably go for longer balls in that instance, as opposed to more maybe ticky-tacky triangular stuff that you would play as you move forward throughout the field in towards the central midfielder position. What you can see here is that his progressive pass distance hasn't moved much. It hasn't changed much, and it hasn't gone down much since you've gone from a defensive midfielder to a central midfielder. Once again, he progresses the ball. He's good at progressing that ball forward. So he's not just a pass it sideways guy. I'm the last thing I'm going to go through as well is look at the faith. You can see the faith that Sampaoli has put in Kamara. 88.9 touches in the 2021-2022 season. That's 88.9 touches per game. That's a lot, as I say. That's really good, and that's really, really great to see. The faith has been put in him, and you know, he's repaid it because Marseille have gotten into the Champions League. And to be honest with you, when you say that, why didn't he stay at Marseille is a massive question, you know, and I don't know. I don't want to answer it because he's ours. I don't want to throw anything up like that because he's ours. And I think what he does in the field is very, very, very instinctual. It's very measured, and it's something that I think we will all be delighted to see in the games in 2022-2023 season. Let's take a look at some of your comments there just before we pop off. Fred Red 50 says, this could be looked at in 5 years' time as the greatest signing the club has ever pulled off. Right now, it sits at 2 all-time underneath that guy, Phil from Rio. Absolutely. Papa Hex says, excellent news. And Junior Bennett has that fantastic emoji with the sunglasses. Thanks a million to everybody who's thanking me for the content on the podcast and the other podcasts I've been on. Really appreciate that. That's really, really nice to see. Thank you so much. We have AVFC Jared says, not a huge deal. He was released heads in the cloud again. He was offered 60k a week more than Newcastle and Madrid. About why he chose Villa, money talks or record for French players are crap anyway. My statistical analysis. I love you, AVFC agent Jared. We agree on a lot of things. I think the statistics bear out that is an intangible that doesn't show up on the football field. It could very well be true, but I don't think it shows up on the football field based on his level of play. Great if we can outspend people, why not? For years we've been victims of people outspending us. So if we can outspend people, that's fantastic. Absolutely. It's a point of progress. Absolutely. And, you know, as I say, we could be back here in 2 years' time thinking we're all wrong. But based on the statistics and the play that I've seen on the field, I think this is a very shrewd signing, as do 99% of the sports media, both in France and in England. But as I say, as always, there's always a propensity to potentially have this as this to pad out as well. Chris Thayer says, Neil, do you think Dougie would thrive as a 6 next to Boubacar Kamara? Interesting if we were to go playing a double pivot. I know I would have loved to have seen us play a double pivot yesterday, but we just didn't. And that was, you know, when we went into that protection mode, as Stephen Gerrard said. It would be interesting. I think obviously if you have the work that people have to do, it's going to make it should make them twice as productive. Specifically Dougie, I just don't think Dougie was comfortable at all in the half spaces that he had to get into as a number 6. And I think that when he was given license to go forward from that 6th position, that there was very little like the other two guys, McGinn and Jacob Ramsey. They're busy covering those spaces, as I mentioned, those half spaces, and it kind of just left us with a train track down the middle. So it's not Dougie's forte. So maybe it does work, but I don't think that's going to be our default position next season where we play 2 holding 6s. I don't think so. I just nothing that I've seen from Gerrard would bear that out. I think more so we're going to see a more flatter midfield next year from Aston Villa. Darren C says, unreal signing. Joel Grizzle says, hello Neil, I'm in Wicklow this week. Bring me some great transfer news, please. All I can do is just go on who we signed, but hopefully, fingers crossed, this won't be the last one, and we will see a lot of early business, because lest we forget, we are going to Australia early in the preseason as well, and I don't think Gerrard wants to be conducting business from halfway around the world. So that's just my hunch, my feeling in my waters. I don't know whether that's going to be true or not, but we'll see. Hopefully we will get the transfer news early so we can relax and we can enjoy the trip to Australia and maybe get up at crazy o'clock to see those matches if they are being streamed anywhere. British Mick says the confirmation of Kamara has excited me in the same way that I get excited when I think I've eaten all the meat off my Sunday roast and then I spot the tip of a sausage under the mash. Absolutely. There's the analogy of the day. There is the analogy of the day. I love it. Absolutely. Oh my God. Whitebiff says, afternoon. Wow, that was fast work. Obviously, Villa must have really done a lot of groundwork in the background. Top stuff, onwards and upwards, up the Villa. And yes, I think that is true. I think we were heavily in for him in January. I think we went over with the brain trust to put our arms around him and roll out the red carpets. And, you know, what was that, 2-3 weeks ago? I think we did a lot of plumossing, whining, dining, whatever you want to call it. Plumossing is a very Irish word. I don't know whether that one will travel across the world. It really means whereby you completely and utterly shower somebody with affection in the hope that they will come to your way of thinking. So I think that's probably what we did. And you know what? If that's what we need to do to sign players, why not? All the rest of the teams have big, massive entourages that they send left, right, and center to try and plumoss people or try and get people to come to their team. So why can't we do it? Where else are we? Neil Callahan asked me, have I got my finder's fee yet? No, I didn't find him, which not as I would like to have. Although if Czech Decoure does come through the doors, which we haven't linked with him at all, but everybody knows my penchant for him. If that does happen, maybe I might have to ask for a finder's fee on that one, because as I said, that was definitely somebody that I took a shine to early on. Lads, there's tons and tons of comments. I apologize, I won't be able to get to all of them. I'm going to scroll a bit further down and see here. This is true. Only just jumped onto the stream. It's hard to compare Kamara to other players who play in different leagues. He has done well in France, and hopefully he does as well in a far harder league. Boubacar Kamara, Yves Bissouma was the reason that was one of the reasons I picked him, because obviously he's somebody who's transitioned from the French game into the Premier League as well. So I just thought it was interesting to have that comparison. I compared him then with Douglas Luiz, who is somebody he would be playing either beside or in place of, and then Declan Rice was the player that when I see him, he treads the same lines as Declan Rice from playing the 6 to the 8 in the hybrid position or whatever else you want to call it in between. For sure. Yeah, look, as I say, guys, this isn't going to be the last transfer show we're going to do. There's going to be some transfer shows we're going to do over the next few days and next few weeks as well. The Villa would have been linked for. They're just people I like and I think could come in and play in this team. If you like it, if you like what you're seeing, I'd love a subscription to the channel. Really, really appreciate it. If you could give this video a thumbs up as well, that would be really, really cool. And as I say, if you could, if you listen to podcasts, please subscribe to our podcast as well, our audio podcast, because some of the information, some of the stuff we will put out will be through the audio podcast as well as here. We're not going anywhere from YouTube, but some of them we won't be able to put up on YouTube just due to time constraints and so on. And they may just go on the audio podcast first. So I don't want you guys to miss out on anything. So with that, guys, I am going to wrap it up for a great day. Boubacar Kamara signed, and most of us weren't even hadn't even got our 14th coffee in at that stage. That's how early they had signed him, and it's great to see. And look, it's great to have that positive PR, and long may it continue. And hopefully we have a couple of more signings on the heels of this one. But until next time, everybody, stay safe and cross your fingers that more signings come through the door. And all that's left to say is up the Villa.